live stream. So we're now live on Instagram. We should be live on Facebook, those of you in the Strive community. And now we're live on YouTube. Okay, so let me just bring this up on my screen. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So hopefully you can all see that. I know that there's a reflection on the view. So hopefully you can all see that okay. All right. So I want to talk to you guys about 3 habits which transform my life. I'm going to keep this one reasonably short. We're going to keep it under 30 minutes, but I want to go through these different habits which over the years, I'm really talking about over the last 10 years, I discovered these along the way through trial and error or through paying people a lot of money, mentors, and just observing how they did things differently. And when I embraced these 3 habits, they really did change my life. That's not hype. That's not an exaggeration. They really did. Okay, just excuse me with my coffee. I'm still getting woken up here this morning in Costa Rica. So let's get started. What are these 3 habits? Let's begin with habit number 1. Habit number 1 is the concept of do it now. Okay, do it now. This is something that I picked up, I was probably around 24, 25, and let me kind of set the background. I'd started this venture that I was involved in, and I was really getting nowhere. I was one of those people who just couldn't find success. I'm showing up to the events, I'm putting in the time, I'm putting in the energy. I had dropped out of university to focus full time on this thing, but no matter what I did, I wasn't getting traction. I would have like little peaks where I'd get some success, but for some reason I would always kind of revert back to just struggling. And there was one guy who was about 3 years older than I was, and he was doing something completely different. But I would observe this guy. I was on his email list, so I would get his promotions, and I would watch this guy who seemed to effortlessly get all of these results. And he was in the place that I wanted to be. And he was a young guy like myself in his 20s at the time. And I thought I could learn a lot from this guy. So what I did is I did everything I could to get on his radar screen. Okay, I found ways to help him with what he was doing so that he would notice who I was, because he was in the States, I was in Australia. I was in Perth, Australia. And finally, I did get on his radar screen. So we connected by email. And a few weeks later, we got on a Skype call. And I just kept finding ways to help him because I wanted to learn from him. I wanted to get into his inner circle and find out how does this guy operate. And finally, I did. So I started working for him. And I was managing a part of his venture that he was doing. But we would communicate. Every couple of days we would get on a Skype call. And I was always very conscious of just how this person operated. And the one big thing that I noticed that he did differently than what I did, what most people did, the amount of time between an idea and taking action was incredibly short. I remember being on the phone with him and he would come up with an idea, and days later we would be executing on that idea. And up until that point, I had this preconceived notion that this was an incredibly strategic person who planned out every little detail and probably had things planned out months in advance. And I realized that just wasn't true. This was actually someone who was essentially making it up as they went along. They would have an idea and then they would find a way to implement as soon as possible. And so that amount of time between idea and action was incredibly short. And when I had that realization just from observing, that was very empowering for me. I realized, you know what? I don't have to get every little plan. I don't have to plan everything out. I don't have to get every little detail perfect. I can have an idea and then launch it and then figure things out as I go along. Now, I want to be very clear here. I'm not talking about in a business context. I'm talking about in any context, any area of your life. Could be in your job, your career, wherever it is. But the amount of time between the idea and action, if you could shorten that, you're going to get a lot more done. And you're going to get a lot more done because the obvious reason you're taking a lot of action. But number two, we learn through feedback, right? So if you take some kind of action where it's public, it's real, you did it, you put it out there, and then you get feedback from the real world, whether they like it, whether they don't like it, then you can make adjustments as you go. It's kind of like a rocket taking off. A rocket is off course most of the time. So because it's in motion, we can always see a trajectory of where it's going, and it can always get back on course. But something that's just stationary, it's not moving, you can't really do anything with that. So when you just launch something, when you launch an idea, even when you don't have all the answers in your mind yet, you don't know how everything's going to go, you can make the adjustments as you go along. So you get this feedback from the real world much faster. So that's habit number one, shortening that time between idea and execution. And I can't stress how important this is because I noticed that as I got older and I started to get more success in different areas, I would observe, okay, this is how I now do things, and then I would watch other people do things. And I noticed a lot of people, they would have ideas, but they would think about it. They would talk about it for weeks, for months. And then I would see them way down the track and I would ask them, how's that idea going for you? Did you ever launch it? Did you ever do it? And it's mostly just talk. Okay, it's mostly talk. They didn't take action on it. So the next time you have a great idea or you want to do something, okay, you want to get something done, you have this dream about doing something, always ask yourself, what action could I take right now, no matter how minimal it is, but what action could I take right now to just get this in motion, to just get this moving? Let's think about it this way. Let's say you want to work for a really prestigious company. There's a company in your mind that you've always admired and you've always thought it would be really nice to be able to say, I work for that company. I work with those people. So you have this idea, you have this ambition. What you do is when you have that thought, then you ask yourself, okay, what action could I take right now to get this moving? Okay, well maybe I could start looking for connections on LinkedIn, people who I know who know someone who works there, or perhaps I know someone in my network who works there directly. But you start looking for connections and then send them a message and say, hey, how's it been? How have you been going? Blah, blah, blah. I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to schedule a phone call and talk to you about something. Would you be able to carve out 10 minutes for me? I want to talk to you about a career path and I really admire what you're doing and I'd love to talk to you about that. So that little action step of just sending the message, it seems small, but it gets the ball rolling. It gets things in motion. And most people don't do that. Most people have the idea, the inspiration, and then they just sit on it and they do nothing. Okay? So you shorten the amount of time between idea and execution. Okay, next habit or next principle which transformed everything for me. So I remember in high school, way back in high school, in some mathematics class, we learned about the Pareto Principle. And I'm sure you've all heard of the Pareto Principle before. So 20% of inputs cause 80% of the results. There's this skewed reality of you've got a minority of inputs or causalities that produce the vast majority of results. We've all heard of that. But very few people really think about it at a deep level and just how prevalent it is in their entire life. Okay, and it's everywhere where you look. Like right now, I'm looking around. I am in the conference room here in Costa Rica, the location that we're going to be doing seminar vacation events next year, starting in January. But I'm looking around right now, and you can do the same thing. Just look around at the floor with where you are. So 80%, okay, 80% of all foot traffic and wear and tear on that floor that you are standing on right now, sitting down somewhere, is in 20% of the area. Okay, so it's here on the floor. It's in nature. Okay, it's in nature. We have some bamboo trees growing outside. The bamboo trees. So 80% of the growth happens in 20% of the time. Most of the year, they're not really growing, but there's certain parts of the year where they grow insanely rapidly. I sent out an email last night. I sent out an email to my entire list. It's not an enormous list, but I click send, I send it out. And as always, I go and check the open rates 12 hours later, 24 hours later. And it's always more than 80% of the opens come from the same 20% of the people. This is the reality with everything that we do. Your friends, people that you associate with. If you were to list out every person that you've interacted with over the last 7 days, you've had like face-to-face contact with them. So it's going to be people in your family or whoever you live with. It might be some relatives. It might be people at work. But if you add all of that up, you would get over 80% of your enjoyment from interacting with 20% of those people. Okay, the other 80% of those people, you don't really care one way or another, and there's probably a percentage in there who you would prefer to never see again. But most of your enjoyment comes from just a small amount of the people that you interact with. Same with your friends. Think about all of your friends that you have. You've got friends who are just friends, they're people you spend some time with, but then you might have friends who you're really close to. Well, if you look at all of your friends, 80% of your enjoyment comes from 20% of your friends. So what if you spent more time with just those people and less with everyone else? So that's what the 80-20 principle is all about. Now, I like to take it a step further because it goes down infinite levels. Okay, so you've got, I wish I had a graph here that I could draw on, but just imagine, I'll try and map this out, right? So between my bottom hand and my top hand, that's 100%, right? So we have 20% here. 20% here of the inputs is causing this top 80% of the results, okay? Now, of that 20%, we can do 80-20 on the 20%. So we do 20% of 20%, which is 4%. And 80% of the 80% is 64%. So in other words, what that means is, so this is 100, you've got 4% of inputs create 64% of outputs. So more than half the results you get in anything in life, more than half, are caused by 4% of the inputs. In other words, the other 96%, which is the vast majority, is mostly a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. And so I like all of you, I heard about this in school, but I never really appreciated it, how deep it goes. But then I started learning from a guy called Perry Marshall many years ago, and he introduced me to another guy called Richard Koch, who wrote the book on 80-20. He's written a lot of books on 80-20, but Richard Koch apparently is worth hundreds of millions of dollars and works just a few hours a day. And he's a former, not investment banker, but something related to that. But he's made most of his money through really clever investments. And this is a guy who, when I say he only works a few hours a day, he's really meticulous about that. Like, he doesn't spend hours a day checking emails. He doesn't answer emails. He's got a very small window of time. He shuts out most people. He shuts out most distractions. He spends a very small amount of time of his day working on very high leverage things that can have enormous results. So his name is Richard Koch. Koch is spelled K-O-C-H. Richard Koch. So check out his books. But he's written a number of books. I forget the name of the main book, but just search for 80-20 Richard Koch and you'll find it. But he really takes it to a deep level. When you read his stuff, when you read his books, he gives all of these scenarios, all these different situations in life that we don't really think much about, and he shows the skewed reality of how they are. Because most of us, we make this big mistake of spreading the inputs. Let me rephrase that. We make the big mistake of assuming that outputs with anything are a result of the average of the inputs. And that's a terrible, terrible mistake to make. Let me explain. Let's say that you had 100 scientists at NASA, okay, 100 scientists, rocket scientists at NASA. and they achieve some big milestone. They launch some rocket to another planet, and they're able to land there. The natural assumption for all of us is that, wow, those 100 scientists at NASA, they must all be geniuses. They must have all contributed to putting this rocket on Pluto or wherever it was. They must have all equally contributed. They must have all put in 1% each. There's 100 of them. And it averaged out, and they're all geniuses. In reality, what's far more likely is that in those 100 very smart people at NASA, there's maybe 3 or 4 true geniuses. And they did more than half the work. Those 3 or 4 true geniuses, they were the ones who were more than half responsible to put that rocket on Pluto or whatever the milestone is. And that's the way it is. If you looked at a bunch of mathematicians, a bunch of mathematician geniuses, and some big thing was solved, it's always going to be a very small minority. And what a lot of us want to do is we want to average things out in our mind. I'm not explaining this very clearly, so let me just back up and try and re-explain it. If you achieve some big milestone in your career, right? You get a promotion, you get this big promotion, and you're really happy with yourself. And you think, you know what, all of my work paid off. Over this past year, all of those hours paid off. You think about all the extra hours you spent at work, all the networking and everything that you did. And you lump all of that together, and you think every one of those days contributed, and it all contributed to this milestone result. That's wrong. Okay, that's not what happened. In the previous year, all of that stuff that you did, every day that you were putting in, all the extra overtime, a lot of it did not matter. Okay, a lot of it did not matter. But inside of all of that, there were a few things you did right, that you did really well. A few things, maybe just 4%. 4% of it. A very small minority of things that you did which created this big moment. So perhaps you spoke to the right person in upper management, and you complimented them on something, and it got you in their good books. And that one little event contributed an enormous amount to you getting a promotion. Or perhaps out of all the work you did over the past year, there was one thing that you did in all of that work, one project where you really performed really well. You did a really amazing job. And that got you noticed more than anything else that you did. So what I'm saying to you is, when you look at your own life and you look at all of your achievements, everything that you've been happy with, that you've achieved, don't look back on it all as like one big thing averaged out day by day. Ask yourself, what were the actual events? What were the real things that contributed to me getting this result? What was the 4% that resulted in the 64% of all the results? Because if you can isolate what's truly producing the result, if you can isolate those small factors which are really causing this result, and then you can double down on them, that's when you can create exponential growth. That's when you can grow really far and produce results. And I can just tell you, over the past 10 years, the things that I've done that have really paid off in a big, big way and produced a lot of results, when I look back on them, I can see that it was a very small minority of things that I did which actually produced the result. Most of it didn't. Okay, let me give you one example. Many years ago, it was 2015, and I hear about this event that's going on in Hong Kong. Okay, and this event is for people in the hotel industry. Okay, it's for people in the hotel industry. I wanted to get into the hotel industry because I was doing events. I wanted to look at getting a hotel, possibly acquiring a hotel to do events at to save a lot of money. So I wanted to learn about the hotel industry. I'm in Malaysia. I hear about this big event happening in Hong Kong. It was like 2 days away, and it's like $1,000 or something like that to go to. And it's going to be full of hotel executives. So people like the CEO of Marriott and very senior people like that, billionaire investors who own these different hotels. And then there's me, who doesn't have a clue about this industry. It's not my industry. But I have this like gut feeling about it. And I think, need to go to that. There's possibly a connection there that could really help me with learning about the hotel industry. So I book my flights, I get the ticket, I arrive late because it was so short notice. So it's already started by the time I get there. It's already like a day into it. But I remember getting there was like 500 people in the room. All of them are wearing suits and formal clothing. These are all hotel executives and managers and so on. And I show up wearing a polo shirt like this and some jeans. So I stand out straight away, and I'm probably the youngest person there. Most of them are over 50, 40, 50, 60. And as they're talking on stage, they're using all these different acronyms, and I don't have the slightest clue what is going on. I don't even know what they're talking about. So at the end of that first day, I kind of go back to my hotel room, and I just focus on what I was doing then, which was my own online stuff. I don't go to any of the networking events, for example. I just think, what's the point? Like, this is not my crowd. I don't know what they're talking about. And so I take the easy way out. I just go back to my room and go get absorbed into my world and what I do. The very next day, same thing. But they had this networking meeting that night, okay? And so I go back to my hotel room. I don't intend on going. But as I'm sitting in my hotel room alone, doing my work, I kind of feel guilty. I think to myself, I traveled all the way here, and here I am, sitting in my room when I should be out there trying to network, meet a connection there, someone who might be able to help me acquire or learn about the hotel industry. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to go. So I close my laptop, I walk out, I walk down to this restaurant, outdoor bar. I walk in and I see someone kind of sitting by themselves. I'm not the greatest conversationalist, but I have a couple of beers and everyone's drinking and we start talking. I go and meet this person, and it turns out that he is a hotel owner, very nice guy. So we chat for probably a good hour, and I tell him, I want to learn more about the hotel industry and so on. The very next day, I see him again. His name is Jack. So we're back in the seminar room during this hotel event, and we have our morning breaks. Everyone's getting coffees and teas and biscuits and so on. And I'm chatting to him. He's the only guy I know. And another guy comes by, joins the conversation, and Jack later tells me that this guy is one of the biggest hotel developers in the country that he's from. He's working on major deals, and at the time he was overseeing a multi-billion-dollar development in Macau, which is like the Las Vegas of Asia. And I got this guy's business card. So I ended up following up for weeks, okay, to this big shot in the hotel industry. And I sent him a lot of emails and asked what he meant to me. Does he know any connections who, if there's a hotel that's coming up for sale, etc., etc. And I was really persistent with it. And eventually he did respond and he agreed to work with me. And that actually led to one of the acquisitions that I did a whole number of years ago. Now, here's the moral of the story, the whole point. That one little chance meeting, meeting Jack and then Jack introducing me to this person, that person then telling me about this feature deal, that was a tiny percentage of the entire time spent at this event. It was a tiny little minority of action steps and time spent which produced this enormous result. And so I often think back over the last 10 years, and there's moments like that, very small chance moments that produced a much bigger result. And what I'm saying to you is, you got to look back at your life, think about every achievement, every milestone that you've achieved, and try and think in your mind, what were the factors which actually caused that? Because it wasn't everything you did averaged out to each day. No. Most of what you did was a waste of time. Most of what you did was irrelevant. It was a few things you did right, which produced the big result. And those are your leverage points. And if you can identify the leverage points and you can double down on them, that's when everything can really start to happen for you. And that's where you can have immense results. Okay, so that's habit number 2. Habit number 3 is this: embrace discomfort. embrace discomfort. That was enormous for me, okay? Because for a long time, I wanted to do everything where I was comfortable. I wasn't stressed. I wasn't strained. So I wouldn't voluntarily put myself in situations that made me uncomfortable. I just wouldn't do it. And then I remember again, this was around 23, 24, somewhere around that age. I remember getting an invite to speak on stage at an event. And this event was going to be in San Diego. I was in Perth, Australia. So it was already a 35-hour journey to get there from where I was. And I accepted it. And it was, at that point, by far the most uncomfortable thing I'd ever done. Going and speaking on stage in front of 200 people about this topic. But I did it, and it was so uncomfortable, so stressful. But the end result of it just set off a whole series of events from that point on, which led to some really incredible things. So embrace discomfort. A lot of people don't want to do that. Now, you guys hear me talk a lot about these Strive 10-day challenges, where I tell you about how they work. The Strive 10-day challenge, for those of you who don't know, it's a system I have. It's completely free. Okay, it's a training system. You get involved in it, and what you do is you think of 2 or 3 areas of your life where you would like to see dramatic improvement in 10 days, or new habits that you would like to build. Perhaps you want to wake up earlier. Perhaps you want to be a lot more consistent with going to the gym. Perhaps you want to learn new skills that are going to get you ahead in your career. But you think of, what are these areas in my life where I want to see dramatic improvement? And then what you do is you think, what actions, forget about how uncomfortable or stressful they are, but what actions could I take which would produce that result, or at least get things in motion? So for example, you want to be someone who wakes up earlier in the morning. Well, what are those action steps you need to take? Well, obviously you need to start sleeping earlier. Okay, you need to wind down earlier so you can fall asleep and wake up earlier. You need to have an alarm clock, but not just an alarm clock. You need to ideally have a series of alarm clocks so that you can't just hit snooze and go back to sleep. You've got other alarm clocks outside of your room, so you have to literally get out of bed, go and shut them off, and wake yourself up in the process. So you start to think about, what action steps would I take to begin to build this new habit or make serious change? Another thing you might do. So I'm right now doing a Strive 10-day challenge. That's why I'm doing so much more with content production. I'm doing these live streams every day. I'm doing a whole bunch of stories. I'm doing a lot of different things on social media. So I thought to myself, okay, what actions would I need to take for 10 days to start talking a lot more about Strive and getting the word out there? And I realized, well, I need to really ramp up the amount of content production I'm doing versus content consumption. I'm just consuming all the time everyone else's content, and I realized I've got to flip that around. So I said, what would these action steps need to be? So there's 2 or 3 areas of your life, different areas that you want to see dramatic improvement. I can't tell you what they are. You've got to decide what they are. You decide what they are, you decide what the action steps are, and then you enter the Strive 10-day challenge. Okay, you enroll it. You just fill out your email address, you fill out the form. It's at changeyourlifein10days.com, by the way, changeyourlifein10days.com. But then someone from my team, they're going to call you. Okay, when they call you, they're going to ask you, what are these areas of your life that you would like to see dramatic improvement in? What is it? And you're going to tell them. You're going to tell them if it's health, waking up earlier, fitness, career, whatever it is for you. Again, this is your challenge. It's all for you. And then what they're going to do is they're going to be calling you every single day. And the purpose of that is to help keep you accountable. You've got to keep yourself accountable, but they're going to be checking in every single day, and they're going to be following up. Did you take the action step? Did you do it? And you're going to tell them yes. And each day that you do it, these new habits begin to become more deeply ingrained. But here's my whole point. So habit number 3 is embrace discomfort. It's going to be uncomfortable. Okay, it is going to be uncomfortable because you're taking action at a rate that you haven't done before, and you're doing it far more consistently than what you've ever done before. Because a lot of people are great at starting things for 1 or 2 days, but to do it every single day for 10 days, That's uncomfortable for a lot of people. But that's why someone from my team is calling you, because we want to see you keep on doing it for 10 days. And what happens is by the end of the 10 days, if you've done these action steps every single day, you're going to feel so good about yourself. But not only that, you're going to produce a result. Now, that result could be you've built a new habit or the beginnings of a new habit where you can wake up earlier, or where you do exercise a lot more, or where you do invest in your own career knowledge and you're upgrading your skills. But whatever that area is going to be for you, you've embraced the discomfort. And what I find is what happens with discomfort, at first it's uncomfortable. Okay, so for the first 5 days, 7 days, it's really uncomfortable. But if you can make it to 10 days, you get to a point where your body becomes used to it, your mind becomes used to it. And what previously was very stressful for you, now you accept it as more of the norm and you're able to handle it. It's kind of like the elastic band. You have an elastic band and you stretch it, it'll spring back to where it was, its original size. But if you stretch it enough, for long enough, it will never return back to its original size. It will be permanently stretched. And that's how we are with uncomfortable situations. Things that would result in a lot of progress, but we avoid because they make us uncomfortable. There was a time where doing a live stream like this would have made me incredibly uncomfortable. I never would have done it. In fact, years ago, I never would have even got in front of a camera and made videos. Now, these days, you can see I make a lot of videos. I've been doing videos now for many years. But there was a time where I knew that I knew what I should be doing. I knew I should be doing them. I should be making them, and they would help me. But I avoided it for years, for many years. And one of the things that I did to get over that fear and just do it is I announced the daily video series to my audience. And I said, I'm going to make a daily video and I'm going to send this out. And you can expect this. Every single day there was a video. So now there was accountability. So now there's a bunch of people expecting me to put out a video. So on the days where I didn't feel like doing it or I didn't feel comfortable in front of the camera, now all that became irrelevant. My discomfort no longer mattered. I had to get it done. And I did it for enough days that I got to a point where I became desensitized to it and it wasn't a big deal anymore. Okay, it actually became just part of my normal life. I make videos. So the same can happen for you. There's areas of your life right now where you know you could create rapid results, you could create a lot of progress, but you unconsciously don't take the action steps because they make you uncomfortable. They stress you out. And those of you on Instagram, sorry about that. My camera's right now on a sticky tape tripod, so it's falling off. Sorry about that, all that shake. Okay. But anyway, guys, that's really about it. I'm going to wrap this up and just tell you those are 3 things which really helped me, and I think they can help you. So let me just recap what they are. Number 1 was do it now. The amount of time between having an idea or an inspired thought and then taking action, shorten it. You have an idea, think to yourself, okay, what little step could I take right now to get the ball rolling? Action number 2 or habit number 2 is the 80-20 principle, but go down to a different level. Let's call it the 64-4 principle. 4% of the inputs that you do, 4% of everything you do creates more than half, 64% of the results. Meaning 96% of your time, your waking hours, where you devote time and energy to, mostly, this isn't very nice to hear, but mostly it is a waste of time. So if you can identify and isolate the few things that you do, which produce the majority of the results, and then double down on them, triple down on them, then you'll get a lot more results in all kinds of areas of your life. And the third one, what was it? Embrace discomfort. Okay, embrace discomfort. There's action steps that you know you should be doing. You avoid them because they stress you out, they make you uncomfortable. But if you can create an environment where you're almost forced to do them for at least 10 days, then you'll get to a point where that elastic band will become permanently stretched and they won't be so uncomfortable anymore. So I can help you with all of that. I can help you with all of that with the Strive 10-Day Challenge. It is 100% free. All it requires of you is that you put in time, you be willing to embrace a little discomfort, but it creates results better than just about anything else I've ever done in a very short amount of time, 10 days. So if you want to take part in that, go to changeyourlifein10days.com, 10 as in the number. Changeyourlifein10days.com and fill that out. Now, if you find that you're not doing that right now, if you're just sitting there watching me and you're not going to that URL and doing it, ask yourself why. There's something about it that perhaps makes you a little bit uncomfortable. You know you're going to have to do more work. You know that it's going to get you uncomfortable. It's going to stress you a bit. But that's a sign that you need to do it. Okay, that's a sign that right now you want to stay in that warm, comfortable zone that you're in, but you know you could be doing better. This will allow you to do better. Okay, so go to changeyourlifein10days.com, enroll. Again, it's free, and in 10 days from now, we can create some rapid results for you. Okay? All right, thanks everyone. That's it. I will see you tomorrow, roughly around the same time. Thanks very much, and have a good day.